Well, hello and welcome to another episode of In Conversation with Benedict Rogers, which is an interview series produced by Hong Kong Watch, broadcast on social media and on YouTube. And I am Benedict Rogers, and it's a really great pleasure and privilege to welcome as our guest this week someone who really to the world and certainly to people in or from Hong Kong needs no introduction. Emily Lau, one of the leading Democrats over many years in Hong Kong. Emily Lau, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Ben. Very good to talk to you.
Thank you. It's great to talk with you again. Emily, we're at the end of yet another terrible week for Hong Kong. We've seen the sentencing of Joshua Wong, Agnes Chow and Ivan Lam, and then the imprisonment awaiting trial in April of Jimmy Lai. Let me start by asking, with all the bad news that we've had in recent weeks and months in Hong Kong, what keeps you going?
Well, Ben, as I have told many young people and older people, the situation here, of course, is grim and will get worse. But if we look around Asia and further afield, there are many places, many countries where the people suffer a lot more than we do. They are dodging bullets, they are getting arrested and tortured and killed. So maybe that is our fate too. But right now, I can still talk to you. If I'm in a more dangerous situation, I won't be able to talk to you. And I've been talking to foreign journalists and local journalists all the time. Maybe I'll get arrested. I don't know. But so, relatively speaking, well, we are not as bad as mainland China. You know, so close to us, and we're there. The people enjoy much less freedom and much less personal safety and all that. So I think that we have to put things in perspective. And I have been expecting, you know, things could get worse. But of course, few people expected things to come tumbling down just within the last 12, 15 months. So anyway, so as the saying goes, I will not allow the bastards to get me down, Ben. So I'm always very lively and very positive. I'm not, when people ask me, are you optimistic or pessimistic? I said, no, I am very positive. And I will continue to do what I can do until I'm stopped. Then, okay, they come through the door, they arrest me, then, you know, before that, I will do my best. So when you say, hey, Emily, can we talk to you? I said, of course. And anybody else who wants to talk to me, I will talk until I'm shut up. I don't know when that day will come, Ben, but I mean, that's my attitude.
Well, that's an extremely inspiring attitude and a message I think that many people need to hear when morale, I'm sure, is very low. Hearing that attitude is very important. Let me just go a little bit back in time to look at some of the issues in the past. You, but also relevant currently as well. You began your life as a journalist, as I did. I began my career as a journalist in Hong Kong, so we have that in common. But can you talk a little bit about firstly what got you into journalism, but also looking at the situation now? What is your feeling about the importance of media freedom in a free society, and how much is it under threat in Hong Kong today?
Well, you know, I went to university. I got my first degree from the University of Southern California, and it was a degree in broadcast journalism. And I grew up, I'm much older than you, Ben. I did it during the Watergate era, when people, the young people in America really were mesmerized by Woodward and Bernstein, who actually toppled President Nixon. So I got my degree in journalism. I came back to Hong Kong in 1976. And I began working for the South China Morning Post. And then I worked for TVB News, and I went to the UK to study at the London School of Economics, and I worked for BBC Television. Then in '84, I returned to Hong Kong. I actually resigned from the BBC to return to Hong Kong because 1984, as the Chinese government have said, that's the year they will decide on Hong Kong's future, whether they have a deal with the British or not. And so I returned, and in the middle of '84, I got a job with the Far Eastern Economic Review. And I represented the review at the press conference of Maggie Thatcher in December of 1984, after she signed the joint declaration. And so, and then in '91, I quit to stand for election. That was the first time the Brits allowed Hong Kong to have a limited number of seats directly elected to the Legislative Council. So I acted as a journalist and then as a politician. And in 2016, I stepped down after serving in LegCo for 25 years, 7 terms. And I've never lost an election, Ben. But I decided to step down because I think, well, 25 years is a long time. But I mean, like you, I think we have this journalism in our blood. And to see the journalism and journalists under so much pressure now, I mean, a few days ago, you saw the massacre at the cable TV, you know, where 40 journalists either were sacked or they resigned. It's very, very sad. And today, of course, the television, I just saw on the news that they came up with some sort of apology and saying that in the next 2 years, they will not sack any more journalists and there will be no pay cut. But I guess it's a bit late. And so journalism is under tremendous pressure. But if I look back to the days when I was a journalist, which was many, many decades ago, and compared to now, some certain things have not changed. The key thing is the low pay. Journalists have always been paid very badly. But Hong Kong has been very lucky because in spite of the poor working conditions, the bad salary, journalism kept attracting the brightest and the best. And so, you know, over the years, many people have commented on the quality of journalism in Hong Kong. And some, of course, was atrocious, but others, they are not bad. And and they are very brave. I mean, they could have, you know, just gone somewhere else to do public relations or whatever. But many of them hang on until the last minute. But now with so many leaving, and today I heard that another organization has sacked maybe 5 or 10 more journalists because of the economic situation. So it's very difficult. And but I think Hong Kong people, we are very grateful to the brave journalists who suffer so much to try to produce news stories for us. And I hope that new websites, new organizations will emerge which are supported by the readers or by the listeners. And then they can provide jobs for these people who have suddenly been fired. So it is a very difficult situation, Ben. But like the teachers, like people in the religious circle, like in many parts, I mean, people are under tremendous pressure. And that's why you see people fleeing from Hong Kong. And of course, at the end of January, the British government is going to start issuing the BNO Visa. And I think many people will take advantage of it. And I hope they will find a warm welcome in the UK.
Absolutely. Well, I'm certainly working hard to make sure they do receive a warm welcome in the UK. And I'd like to come back to the BNO question in a few moments. But just staying with the question of press freedom just for a moment longer, I saw earlier this week a clip of Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, taking questions, and she was asked a question, if I understood correctly, by a new journalist from cable news who'd replaced those who'd been sacked or resigned. And Carrie Lam herself commented on the fact that he asked a very soft, friendly question. And she even said something like, "My press secretary told me you would be helpful." I can't imagine you asking a soft, gentle question. But what does Carrie Lam's remarks there say about the worrying state of press freedom if journalists now, if those journalists in press conferences or interviews are switching to friendly questions? That's a worrying state of affairs.
Well, indeed. And that journalist who asked the question is one of the guys who sacked the 40 yesterday or the day before. So he's not a young journalist. He's very experienced. And it is very, very sad to see such experienced journalists having to sink to such depth. And then I saw online some remarks saying, "Oh, I remember the guy who is now the head of TVB News going to Beijing to shake hands with Li Pang shortly after the massacre." So it is very sad. And you can see, so Carrie Lam was so cheeky. Actually, maybe she had expected tougher questions. And when those questions did not appear, so she said, "Oh, what's the matter with you?" So it's very, very, I think, very embarrassing for the journalists. And even more embarrassing that clip was leaked to the whole world, and even you saw it. So it is very bad. But then, and I think you probably have heard about the case of this RTHK journalist, Nobella, and she's very tough. And although she is of Pakistani origin, but her Chinese was really very, very good, much better than yours, I think, Ben. Very, very good. And she asked very tough questions at press conference, not just that one-to-one interview, but at press conference. She would ask very tough questions of Carrie Lam. And of course, she didn't like it one bit. And now this journalist who got a job with RTHK a few years ago, and her probation period's over, and now they say they want to start the probation again and ask fresh questions. And people think that maybe because of her performance at press conferences, so she's in such trouble. So I guess it shows you the authorities, including Carrie Lam, they do not like tough questions. But when you ask lame questions, then they say, "Oh, what's the matter with you?" So you can't win. If you are lame, they laugh at you. If you are tough, they try to fire you.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. Let me move on to the question of LegCo. You, as you just said a few moments ago, a long-standing legislator, former leader of the Democratic Party of Hong Kong. How did you feel when you saw firstly the disqualification of the 4 pan-Democrat legislators, and then the resignation of all the others?
Well, it's really very, very bad. It's terrible. So that's why I said to you earlier, in the last year or so, things have, changed so dramatically. I mean, I work as a legislator for 25 years, and I was able to work with government officials like Carrie Lam and with pro-Beijing legislators. And for some time, we even formed a coalition of 8 political parties. But now, my colleagues, my members kept telling me, and even those on the other side told me, they say there is no way that they can talk to each other. The relationship does not exist. They are sort of like dead enemies. And then to disqualify them, and my worry is not just disqualifying 4 and leading to the resignation of all of them. My worry is that there may not be election in September next year. And also this business of disqualification, because now they are working on the local legislation about disqualification. It could be applied to district council members, to civil servants who have now got to take the oath, and to judges. So it is very worrying, and it is a very, very handy tool for the powers that be to use to target their enemies. And of course, I mean, the last thing we want to see is the disqualification of judges. But I mean, you well know that in the report by the British government that was published last week, and in the foreword to the report, which was on the first 6 months of this year, but so many things happened after June, and Dominic Raab mentioned that he's talking to the Supreme Court judges about whether they should hang on or whether they should go. And I remember when I was in London in July last year, I went to the House of Commons to meet with members of the Foreign Affairs Committee. I met Tom Tugendhat, the chair, and Bob Seeley. And Tugendhat already talked about the possibility of judges withdrawing from the Hong Kong Court of Final Appeal. And then after that meeting, I went to the Foreign Office and met some officials there. And they were very angry. They said, hey, look at this chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee saying judges should withdraw because they know it's a calamity. But now the Foreign Secretary is talking about such possibility. And if the British judges leave, the Australians and the Canadians, they will all withdraw. And that would be terrible, Ben. And so to think about, you know, legislators, pan-democrats leaving LegCo, maybe district council members getting disqualified, but the final nail in the coffin would be the disqualification of judges. And then Rob referred to things that they are thinking of. And one thing is because they said there are no national security law cases going to the Court of Final Appeal yet. And if they did, they will see how that's handled. But they will also see whether these foreign judges would be allowed to sit to try such cases. As you know, the national security law said it's up to Carrie Lam to appoint those judges who can try such cases. We haven't seen the full list, and I don't think we'd be surprised if there are no names of foreign judges on the list, because they have been upset with foreign judges for quite a number of years anyway. But if that should happen, I think that would be the sign for the British government and foreign judges to say, hey, wait a minute, we are not going to give you this veneer of legitimacy anymore. We will quit. Then what's going to happen to Hong Kong, to our rule of law, independence of the judiciary? So there are all these things which could happen, and happen quite soon, Ben.
Absolutely. Well, you've preempted a question I was going to ask you about the judges, but you've answered it, and very, very powerfully. Just one last question on the democracy movement, and then I'd like to come on to BNOs. What do you think is the future for both the Democratic Party and the other pan-democrat parties that have now left LegCo? And just to add to that, I understand there is a new leadership election for your party, the Democratic Party, coming up. It'd be good to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yes, our AGM, the annual general meeting, it will be on Sunday. And so they will elect the new party leadership. And many young people are standing, which is a very good sign. But of course, I think anyone in his right mind will not be very optimistic about the future. But as I said to you at the beginning, you know, if you look around the region and other places, situation is very difficult. So I think that we should not have any illusion. But this is going to be a test of our resolve, of our determination and commitment. And if people are scared, which is understandable, then of course they will not come forward. or they may even leave. And I'm glad that the UK is opening its door to them. But those who are determined to fight, but in a peaceful and non-violent way, well, of course they will carry on, but they have to take responsibility for their own action. Because if the police or the national security people come in to arrest us, well, nobody can help them. We all know. So they know the risk. And I know there are people in my party and in other parties or those who don't have parties, but there are people who are determined to fight on. But it will be very difficult. But we just want Beijing and the international community to know that, especially my party and many others, we're not asking for independence. We're not asking for a revolution to overthrow the Communist Party. We're just asking for Beijing to keep the promises of the 1984 Sino-British Joint Declaration and the promises in the Basic Law, which is lodged. The Joint Declaration is lodged with the United Nations. So we hope we ask them to keep the promise, and we will just continue to, like a bad penny, we'll keep turning up until we are locked up. But people are locked up and killed in many places. So we will do our best. I think our young members, when they emerge after the Sunday election, I hope they will have a chance to speak and tell the Hong Kong people and the international community what their wishes and aspirations are and how determined they are to fight for Hong Kong.
That's excellent. Do you think that the current situation, that all the bad news of recent weeks and months, has created any sense of new unity among within the wider democracy movement? In the past, there was a certain amount of division and factionism between the traditional pan-democrats and the localists or the younger generation. Has the fact that now you are all under threat under the national security law, under the crackdown, has that brought a greater sense of unity among the different groups who all want freedom and democracy for Hong Kong?
Well, Ben, I'm not the best person to answer your question, because since I stepped down in 2016, I just do not get myself involved in party affairs at all, which is, many people think it's quite un-Chinese, or quite, because some people, they just hang on, they don't want to disappear. But I remember some young people were shocked when I said, when I quit, naked, will not get involved. So I have not been involved, and I don't go and ask questions and so on. Only if these individuals come and talk to me, of course, I will talk to them. So I'm not really 100% up to date with such engagement or the lack of it. But I think that, I hope, as you rightly said, now we have a more, common destiny or, problem. And I hope that we can and we will try to work with each other more. But then democracy is always about competition. It's about argument. It's about debate. But it's also about compromise and to find consensus. That's what I have advocated for decades. But if people refuse to do these things in a civilized way, it's very frustrating. And especially if you see people attacking us as if we are worse than the Communist Party, then you say, hey, wait a minute, what's going on? Well, the political scene is very complicated. I think it's complicated everywhere. So we do the best we can. We have our ideals and principles. We're not going to give them up, but we're willing. I think I'm willing, and my members are willing to engage, to talk to people. But then, not too many years ago, we engaged with the Chinese government to secure a reform package, and they call us traitors, betrayal. I said, that's nonsense. If I have to do it again, if you turn the clock back, I would do exactly the same thing, except maybe I would not go into the liaison office because that building embodied so many bad things. And people feel so angry when they found out that we walked into that building. But of course I will talk to the communists. I will talk to the localists. I will talk to the British. I will talk to anybody. Why not? But then they think if you talk to these people, you're dead enemies. So what do you do, Ben, if you have people like that?
Yeah, absolutely. But very challenging. Let me move on to the subject you raised earlier on, which is the British government's offer for BNOs, something that you, I know, have fought for many years. I remember way back just before the handover, you taking on the Foreign Secretary at the time, Malcolm Rifkind, who incidentally will be my guest on this interview series in a couple of weeks. So, but what's your reaction to the offer that the British government has finally, long overdue, come out with, and what do you think perhaps are still some challenges that exist in the detail of the new policy?
Well, first of all, when you see Sir Malcolm, please give him my regards. And he was very kind, when I was in London in July last year, and again in February this year. And on both occasions, I went to meet him, and he was very, very helpful. And you know what? In February, every time when I meet him and others, I would always be fighting for the BNO people. And he said, I'm sure he doesn't mind me quoting him, he said, I have never come across anyone in this country, that is the UK, who does not think we have responsibility for Hong Kong, which of course is very encouraging. And then he went on to say about, this right of abode thing for BNO people. And he said, if and when it happens, it will happen. Bang, just like that. Gee, I think it was almost like that, isn't it? When Boris Johnson came up with his announcement. But of course, when Boris Johnson, before he made the announcement, he must have spoken to his party members. And of course, very few people objected. And also the Labour Party, and of course the Lib Dem, they didn't think it was good enough. So when that happened, I must tell you, I was quite shocked, pleasantly surprised. And a few of my very good friends in London, they also told me they were flabbergasted. They couldn't believe it. Why, Ben? Because all these years, myself and many people in Hong Kong and in London who have been fighting for it, they thought the British government would never do it. Never. And why? Because even in the last few years, Beijing did quite a number of bad things, and Britain almost did nothing. So when this finally happened, wow, people would say, really? And of course, some people would say it's not enough. The Lib Dems, they kept saying, they should give them the right of abode, British citizenship immediately, which is what I also would like to see. But then when I speak to people with BNO, and they were so elated. They were so happy. So, okay, if the Lib Dem can persuade Parliament to do more, great. But even what's on offer, they think is very good. And then, of course, since then, I have been to the British Consulate here a number of times, and they were very, very helpful. And I asked them questions, and they conveyed them back to London, and they gave us answers. And of course, they say that now the visa is going to be issued at the end of January. But they say sometime in January, they will issue a longer document to give more details so that people who are planning to do, they will find their answers there. So, and then some Hong Kong people asked me, I think last month or the month before, they say, Emily, do you think the Brits will change their mind? Could that happen? I said, of course it's possible. It's Parliament. It's this current government with the support of members of Parliament. They say this is on offer. But after a general election, then you can tell us, Ben, if there's a general election, and then the new government in power, whether it's governing by itself or in coalition, and they say, oh, well, we have a new deal. We have a different deal. We're not going to revoke it or take it away. So there are people who are concerned. And the only answer I could give to them is, I said, I don't think it will happen, because right now it's such a bipartisan issue. All the parties, whether they will come to power later or not, I think they will keep the promise. But Ben, can you answer this? Because some people are really quite concerned that whether the next government, next parliament will change its mind and say, hey, wait a minute, no more.
Yeah, I think I can reassure people that it's extremely unlikely that that will happen for several reasons. I mean, firstly, as you mentioned, the bipartisan support. If anything, both the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats are, as you say, stronger even than the current government. Certainly the Liberal Democrats are, but I think the Labour front bench is very strong on this as well. So I think it's very, very unlikely. And I think also the next general election is still a few years away, 2023 probably, and 23 or 24. So a couple of years away at least. And I think by that point, the policy will be so bedded down and people will have already taken it up. I think it would be extremely unlikely that a future government would reverse the policy. There may be some improvements perhaps under a different government, but I think I can assure people that this policy is here to stay as best as I can see.
Very good. Yes, because there are some people who are concerned about that. But I said, well, you cannot get a cast iron guarantee on anything. But if you're so worried, you take it up now. And I think some will do it after January. And I think that on the whole, they are quite happy. And one thing at first, the British government said that, we want you to come as a unit, as a family. I said, well, wait a minute. I said, some people may not be that ready to go as a family, especially if they have business ties or if they have properties and things. They need time to wind up. So is it possible for one of the family to go with the kids and then the other stay to wind things up and then join? And at first they were not too happy, and then now they think it is okay. And I think many people are very relieved to hear that. And also, of course, they're very good in saying that if you have one BNO, then if the rest of the family are not BNOs, but they can all come. And also they are very, very happy with that. So I hope it will work out. And when they come up with more details next month, I will again go to the British Consulate to discuss with them. And people are sending me questions, to my party, which I immediately refer to the consulate. And they're very, very good, very quickly. They'll come back with answers. If they don't know, they will go to London and try to get them. They are very good because before the document comes out in January, they want to know what the concerns are so that they can figure them out and put it in the document, which is what a government should do, instead of like Carrie Lam sitting in that room and make out all the things without talking to anybody. So I think you can tell your colleagues in Parliament, and the people are very happy with the fact that the government is responsive to people's queries, and certain things cannot be done. They tell them why, but if certain things they're worried about, they will try to explain to them. So I think it's all working out quite well.
That's very encouraging. Of course, there is one group of people that currently is not helped by this program, and that's those under the age of 23 who don't qualify for BNO, many of whom, of course, are among the most vulnerable people if they were young people who took part in protests or in activism and are in danger. Do you think that Britain has a responsibility to them as well? And if not, do you think other countries in the world should be looking to provide some kind of lifeline to those who don't qualify for BNO?
Well, I certainly hope the British government can do more. And we have raised this subject with them on a number of occasions. But they just kept saying, they can't. And they say, okay, they can come and study and do all that and try to get citizenship later. But of course, the British government has also publicly said that they're working with the Five Eyes countries to get them to loosen up their immigration policies so that young people, whether they have BNO passports or not, they can opt to go to America, to Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And in Canada and Australia, they have announced quite good policies, which I think it's very helpful to our young people. But still, if you can persuade the government, parliament, to loosen this up, and just as a sign of to show that you support these young people, knowing that, maybe they can go to North America or go to Australia, but they are also welcome in the UK. If you can convince Parliament to do that, I think that would be great. But it's good that the other Five Eyes countries are doing it. And I, of course, hope that European Union countries will also adopt such policies. And I'm sure you're talking to your colleagues in the European Union. And because some people, they may want to go to Germany, to France, to Holland, So if all these countries can have very friendly immigration policies for the young people especially, I think that would be a very, very powerful sign of support. I mean, you can talk about other things to punish the people. Yeah, that's fine. But I think if you can offer support to these people, I think that would also be very encouraging.
Absolutely. Well, that's something we're definitely pushing, and we'll continue to do so. Emily, can I ask my final question, which builds really on what you've just said, and that is, what else can the international community do? Are you satisfied that the response to the rapid deterioration in Hong Kong from the international community has been strong enough? And if not, what else can the international community do?
Well, I think if we look back to the year and a half in the past year, the international community has spoken out many times, whether it is individually or together. And I'm very, very grateful. And also, of course, I'm very grateful to the international media, which gave Hong Kong a lot of coverage. I remember I went to Canada in November last year to attend the Halifax International Security Forum. And Hong Kong was very much on the agenda, and they actually gave Hong Kong people a prize, the John McCain Prize. And some of the other participants from other countries, which of course the situation a lot worse than Hong Kong, and they were very jealous. They say, how come you always talking about Hong Kong, Hong Kong? And for some reason, Hong Kong has captured the imagination of many people from many different countries, partly because many of them have been here, like your good self. You've lived here, you've worked here, and they have a lot of feeling for Hong Kong. So they have spoken out a lot. And of course, I hope they will continue to pay attention to what's happening. As for what else, what more can they do? Well, there's the national security law, Ben, and I'm not going to breach that law now so that they come and arrest me tomorrow.
Yes.
So,
yes.
But I certainly think, and of course, as we speak, some Hong Kong people are thinking about the Biden administration. And some of them I asked to talk to them and so on. And they say, well, let's wait until the inauguration. So they may have some hope that the Biden administration would be friendlier to China or whatever. But I think what we want, and President-elect Biden has said, which made many people laugh, when he said he wanted to make China follow the rules of the international community. And people say, what? Where are you coming from? But if he is a multilateralist, he wants to work with his allies, which is something I'm not against at all. So I certainly hope that President Biden and the international community can, if they succeed in persuading China to become a responsible member of the international community, to, you know, respect human rights, rule of law, all these things which they say, oh, the Western world, they have these values which China does not share. And China wants to export its system of governance, and which is, we in Hong Kong, we don't share that. So we certainly hope you people will be successful in working with the new administration in America and all your allies all over the world to persuade China to accept, you know, and follow the code of behavior of the civilized world. And we're not talking just about the West, because some of them are quite, you know, say, oh, this is a Western thing, you know, just the white people. No, there are countries in Asia which also adopt these things, like Japan, like Taiwan, South Korea, and others. So it's not a Western thing. It's Asian as well. So I certainly hope that you, in your wisdom, you will use whatever way is effective in trying to get China to change. And China, you know it, Ben, as much as I do. China's going to be around. It's a very, very big economic power, or you may say militarily and politically too. And it has many allies in the United Nations, more than the pro-democracy countries. So we've got to work with China. And I hope that you guys can come up with a good way of persuading, cajoling China to be more civilized. And we in Hong Kong, we are, whether we like it or not, we are in the forefront of this battle. Maybe some or more would be sacrificed. We hope not. But we will use every breath in our bodies to fight for a democratic Hong Kong, and of course, a democratic future for China.
Well, Emily Lau, that's a very powerful note to end on. We will take that message out in our work, and this will go out to our viewers. And thank you so much, both for your time and for your courage in speaking with me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. Bye-bye.